Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In this video I will be flipping this antique dresser. As you can see, it has definitely seen some better days. It was missing a knob on one of the top drawers, and it was also missing this decorative piece here, but I knew I could replicate it since it had a matching piece on the other side. I wasn't a fan of the other hardware pieces that were on it, but it did have solid wood legs and I knew those would be really cool to be stripped down to a natural wood. But before I could get to painting or doing anything, the very first thing I had to do was the prep work, which is cleaning. And as you can see, it was very dirty and the top did have some deep stains in it as well. When you are prepping a furniture piece, it's important to use a degreasing cleaner. I like to use this one, which is called Crud Cutter. You can find it at Walmart, Amazon, most hardware stores have it as well. You just spray that on all over the piece. I let that cleaner set for just a few minutes, and then I usually take some hot soapy water and a scrub brush and really scrub down my piece. The goal with cleaning your piece is to get all the old oil and dirt off of it. With these older pieces, a lot of times people use Pledge and oil-based cleaners on them, so you really want to make sure everything gets scrubbed down very, very well before you even start painting. This piece did originally come with a mirror attached, however, it did not look like the original mirror to the piece, so I went ahead and removed all the hardware for that mirror. It didn't even look like a mirror belonged on it to begin with, to be honest. When you are prepping your piece before a paint job, you really want to make sure you get everything thoroughly cleaned. You want to take out all the drawers and vacuum out all the little dust bunnies and whatever weird stuff that might be hiding behind it. As you can see here, I found a little red handkerchief thing behind the drawers. You really never know what you'll find in these drawers sometimes. Before I clean any of the drawers, I always remove all the hardware pieces and then put those together like in a baggie or something so they don't get lost if I am reusing them. The point of removing the hardware before you paint, a lot of times there's dirt and buildup and grossness behind the hardware pieces themselves, so you really want to make sure you get everything thoroughly clean before you paint. I'm using the same method as I did before when I was cleaning the top, with spraying on some Crud Cutter and then using some hot soapy water, which is just some regular Dawn dish soap and hot tap water. Unfortunately, the top did have some deep water stains as well as some other unknown stains that I couldn't really get sanded out, so I did end up painting the piece. I wanted to keep the top original, like a light wood color, but I just could not get the stains to come out, and sometimes it's okay if you need to paint over it. So since I couldn't keep the top original wood, I went ahead and sanded down the top two drawers to original wood because it did have this really awesome, I believe it's called tiger oak veneer on it, and I wanted to keep that wood grain visible as well. I always sand my pieces before I paint, whether I'm sanding it down to bare wood to do a wash or if I'm just doing a quick scuff sand. I always do it on the drawers as well and the bottoms of it too, just to be sure that everything will glide back together smoothly. A lot of times with the old dressers, the wood can get kind of finicky and spread out as it ages, so sanding really helps. Then I always make sure I fill in any dents or dings with some wood filler, and once that is dry, I just sand that smooth and then it's ready to paint. The next step was to duplicate the missing decorative piece, and to do that I used some amazing molding putty, which you can find at craft stores or Amazon as well. It's a two-part process. You take the clay from part A and the clay from part B and just kind of mush them together until they are all one uniform color. This is a putty that dries hard. It is the mold that you'll be pouring the resin into, so only mix up what you need. And then once you have it all mixed up, you form it around the part that you're trying to duplicate, and then you really want to make sure you get it pushed down in all the grooves, nooks, and crannies of your piece. Once the putty has completely dried and cured, it just peels up like this, and then you have a perfect mold to replicate. So to make a new mold, I'm going to be using a resin, which is a two-part process again. You pour out equal parts of part A and part B into separate containers, and then once everything is measured out correctly, you combine them together. This is a fast casting resin that dries within about 15-20 minutes or so. There are different types of resins on the market, so just be careful when you are purchasing them that you buy the correct one, the one that dries quickly and not the one that takes about 24 to 48 hours. I do have this resin linked down below. It is available through Redesign with Prima's website, and you can try it for yourself. As you can see here, once you mix it up, it starts to turn white, and then when it's ready to go, it'll kind of clear up a little bit, and then you can pour it out into your mold. When you're pouring your resin, you want to go slow and make sure you get in all the little nooks and crannies of your design on your mold. And then once the resin has dried, it does turn white, and that way you know it's ready to be unmolded. And here is the design. Now it's time to attach my decorative mold piece that I created, and there was a little bit of a broken piece from the previous mold that was on there, so I just removed that with a screwdriver and then took the other nails out as well to make sure the surface was flat. I took a little bit of sandpaper to smooth everything out even more, and then took my decorative mold piece and fit it in there to make sure everything was correct. There's a variety of different adhesives you can use to attach your decorative molds, but I like to use just Gorilla Wood Glue. I've never had a problem with it adhering, and it's always worked fine for me. You can also use different kinds of adhesives, like E6000 is a really strong one, but the fumes are kind of brutal, so just be careful what you choose. Once I had my decorative mold attached, I did load it up with some painter's tape just to be sure that everything adhered really well. I let that dry for several hours, and then I removed the tape once it was ready. Since I was painting this piece a light pink, I did want to make sure I primed it beforehand. I unfortunately did not use a stain blocking primer at first, and it definitely showed through after I got my first coat on. Since this piece was an orangey wood tone to begin with, and it had some deep stains on the top, it was a prime candidate for bleed through issues, as you can see here. This is why using a stain blocking primer on pieces like this is very important, because if I didn't prime it first, all that yuckiness would bleed through on my final paint finish. So I got a different kind of primer. This one is from Wiesel. It is a stain blocking primer, and it definitely blocked the stains on the second go around. After the primer had fully dried and cured, I grabbed my paint color, which was called Julia by Lilly Moon Paint. It's this really pretty light blush color. And the paintbrush I'm using is from Klingon brushes. These brushes are probably one of the more higher end and expensive brushes on the market. When you are first starting out furniture flipping, I would recommend just getting some regular brushes from the hardware store. One brush I like a lot is from Wooster. It's a Palm Pro brush. I will show a little picture here. This brush is under $10, and it is a great one when you're first starting out. It is synthetic bristles, so your paint will lay on smoothly. And if you have any questions about brushes or other tools for painting, be sure to leave a comment below. I'd be happy to help. Another thing that really helps with a smooth paint job is a mister bottle. This one I think is just from Amazon. You can find them at lots of craft stores as well. This is something that really helps your paint lay on smooth, and it does take multiple layers to get a smooth finish, but at the end it is worth it, and it will save you a lot of time on sanding. I also like to do quick coats of sanding in between my coats of paint, and I use a high grit sandpaper such as 600 grit, which is what I'm using here. This just ensures that any bumps, brush strokes, or anything that's uneven gets off the surface before I add another layer of paint. And again, I'm starting off with just a quick mist of water to help my paint lay down pretty smooth, and then I brush on another coat of paint. Every paint you use is different. This paint is pretty smooth and self-leveling, so I didn't have to do too much sanding between it, but if you use anything that's like a chalk paint or a clay-based paint, you will have more brush strokes, so just keep that in mind. I wanted to keep the legs a light natural wood color, but first I had to strip off the original orangey toned finish, and I just used this 2-minute remover. I just get it from Walmart. This is one of the better paint strippers that I have found. I tend to have pretty good luck with it, and if anyone has any better suggestions, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. So after I brush on the paint stripper all over the legs, I do wrap it in plastic to keep it from drying out too fast before the paint stripper's had time to do its job. And then once everything has sat for a while, I clean everything up using mineral spirits and some steel wool to scrape off the original finish. Now the paint stripper didn't work 100%, so I did have to go in with my detail sander and get into the little nooks and crannies and get some more of the finish off. The tool I'm using is a multi-tool from Dremel. It is really handy. It has this little sander attachment that can get into little small spaces that a regular sander cannot. To keep the legs a light color, I did use this wood stain from Varathane. Since the legs are down to bare wood right now, if I were just to seal them up, they would still give kind of an orangey, yellowy tone because that is the natural color of this wood. So to keep that tone from popping back through, I want to stain it a light color. So that is what I'm doing here. Whenever you're using an oil-based stain, you want to make sure you are wearing gloves as well as safety glasses. Okay, remember earlier in the video when I sanded down the top 2 drawers down to bare wood? Well, to keep that orangey tone of the wood from popping through on those pieces, I used the same light wood stain that I used on the legs for the top 2 drawers, just to keep everything in the same tone. Whenever I refinish a piece, I always make sure to finish the insides of the drawers as well. To give them a quick little refresh, I use this Howard's Feed-In Wax, which you can also find on Amazon. I get it from a local retailer here in my town. Since this is a wood polish and conditioner, I do like to use it on the bottoms of my drawers as well, where they glide against the other parts of the dresser. This does ensure that the drawers will glide in a little bit better. And then I also add it to the glide parts on the inside of the dresser as well. If you've ever had a wood dresser where the drawers don't slide in very easily, it's probably because the wood has dried out and it just needs to be repolished a little bit. Now, I always like to add extra details to my dressers, including transfers, waxes, and everything else that you can think of. I'm a furniture artist. I don't just do one color finishes typically, so this is why I like to add flowers a lot to my pieces. I went with a transfer with some dark and moody florals because I knew that would pop really well against the light pink background. Then once my transfer was applied, I did a layer of clear wax. Since I was going to be adding decorative waxes to this piece, the layer of clear wax is always the first step when you're doing waxes. This creates a barrier between your paint job and the decorative waxes that you're adding. If I were just to add black wax to this with no protective barrier, it would muddy up the design and not look very good. So always try to do a layer of clear wax before any decorative waxes. I really wanted to accent the details of this piece because they were so pretty, and so to do that I took some black wax and a flat round brush and just kind of accented all the nooks and crannies of the details as well as the carvings in the center there, and did that all around the center of the piece. As you can see, I'm not really applying this too perfectly. I can use the clear wax as an eraser to get off any other areas that I don't want this decorative wax on. Then to highlight some of the areas of the decal pieces that were on the dresser, I took this rose gold metallic wax and carefully painted it on to the various accents on the front. This wax is so buttery smooth and soft, you can just brush it on. You can also use your finger to apply it, but when I'm doing small detail areas like this, I like to use a brush. I also accented the top edge of the dresser with the pink metallic wax just to add a little bit more accents to the top. And here's the final results of this flip. I think it turned out so fun and girly. I absolutely love it. If you want to try the transfers or waxes for yourself, be sure to check out the Redesign with Prima link down below. This dresser is still available for purchase, so if you're interested, my contact info is below. Be sure to check out my website for other creations, which is also linked down below, and follow for more thrift flips, DIYs, and upcycles.